Hey everyone, back for another video. I know I've been inactive the past few weeks, but for a really busy fall where I'm going to be balancing a lot of things, my goal is one video a week. And it's going to be a variety of things, but this week I'm going to be doing my NFL predictions. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs and Detroit Lions open up the season today, so I'm going to give you a quick NFL preview. I'm not going to go into every team. I'm just going to tell you my predictions and what's going on. So here I share my screen. Okay, perfect. So, the NFL season, there's a lot going on, obviously. And before I go into my award predictions, just let me talk about it a lot. There were obviously some really big offseason moves. A lot of teams got better, a lot of teams got worse. This is obviously a huge blanket thing, but I really can't go into every offseason move. There was the coaching carousel. It's like every other NFL season. But let's go into my award predictions. First, MVP Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals have the best passing attack in football between Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Irv Smith coming in at tight end. I think is an upgrade over Hayden Hurst. That offensive line is getting better. They just signed Orlando Brown. I think Joe Burrow, if he is healthy, is going to win MVP. Joe Burrow led the league in 300-yard passing games last year. If I'm correct. And I think that if he's healthy, he tears up any defense that comes at him. I think he wins MVP. Offensive player of the year, Garrett Wilson. I am a New York Jets fan, but I think Garrett Wilson does take a huge step. He had 1,100 yards last year with Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco as his quarterback. Now he brings in, and the Jets bring in one of the best quarterbacks ever, and Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers has already cemented Garrett Wilson as his favorite target. I think Garrett Wilson does get the Davante Adams treatment. That means over 10 targets a game. The Jets have I don't want to call it a weaker wide receiving core, but with Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman, it's a fine wide receiving core. I think Garrett Wilson is definitely wide receiver one. And I think Garrett Wilson, with the target share he gets and how talented he is, he's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. I think he has over 1,500 yards, and I think it's north of 10, 11 touchdowns. Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa. So Nick Bosa just signed a 5-year, 180 million contract to extension with the 49ers. He won Defensive Player of the Year last year. I think he's an absolute monster off the edge. I think that's stating the obvious. And I think the 49ers pass rush got better. I mean, they just brought in Javon Hargrave, who is coming over from the Eagles. And you look at this team and you look at this pass rush between Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and some other guys. They're scary. And I think Nick Bosa is going to be the one fiending. I think that the 49ers have one of the best pass rushes in football. So Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, whether it was at Georgia Tech or Alabama, he was always the main feature in that offense. He's so good out of the backfield as a receiver. And I think when you look at this Lions team, Jared Goff threw for over 4,000 yards last year. He is a pure passing quarterback, and he loves having that weapon. I mean, you look at his time in Los Angeles when he had Todd Gurley, who was great out of the receiving backfield, and now you bring in a guy like Gibbs, who does have some comparisons to Gurley. I compare him mainly to Alvin Kamara, but I think Gibbs will be the main feature or the main running back in this Lions offense. And I think you look at this and you think it's just a really good fit. And I think the Lions are a team that's expected to take a leap forward starting against tonight against Kansas City. And yeah, why do you think the Lions are on the national spotlight? There's a lot of eyes on them. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is not afraid for the challenge. I think that you just look at this team, Jared Goff's going to love him. I think Jahmyr Gibbs, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Tyree Wilson. I love Tyree Wilson coming out of Texas Tech. I think the Raiders is a great fit for him. His speed off the edge is not even comparable. He's so fast. He put up insane combine numbers. And you put him on the other side of Max Crosby, and the Raiders have a formidable pass rush. Yes, the AFC West is a really good quarterback division, but I think Tyree Wilson could get north of 10 sacks as a rookie, especially if him and Josh McDaniels are able to, or maybe not Josh McDaniels, but whoever the defensive coordinator is there, is able to just get Wilson the right reps and stuff. I think that Tyree Wilson will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Comeback Player of the Year, obvious, Damar Hamlin. I think if Damar Hamlin steps foot on the field, which he will on September 11th against the Jets, he should get the award right there. He almost, everybody knows what happens. I'm not going to go into it. But the fact that he's able to fight back and play on an NFL roster and obviously make the 53 because he was on the 53 for the Bills last year. But it's just a testament to him and how much he's worked and how much he's battled. When I saw him go down against Cincinnati, I thought he'd never play football again. So I'm very excited. I'm going to be at the game on 9/11 at MetLife Stadium. I really do think Damar Hamlin will win Comeback Player of the Year, and it's not even close. And Coach Doug Peterson, I think. I wrote Pug Peterson. Okay, Doug Peterson's winning the Coach of the Year. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, they finished so hot last year, and they took Kansas City down to the wire in that divisional round. Kansas City was always going to win that game, but the Jaguars kept on fighting, and they made one of the biggest moves of the offseason, bringing Calvin Ridley And now you give Trevor Lawrence two wide receiver ones in Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. I think the Jaguars are one of those teams that will be towards the top of the AFC this year. I think Trevor Lawrence takes another massive step forward. I'm seeing over 30 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley, I think people are forgetting how good he was. The last time he stepped on a field, he had over 1,300 yards, and that was with Matt Ryan as his quarterback. And I think that Trevor Lawrence is one of the better quarterbacks in the game. He's a top 10 quarterback. I think the Jaguars are a real team. They're good on defense too, with Tyson Campbell, that defensive line led by Josh Allen. And I think that the Jaguars are going to be good. Doug Peterson, coach of the year. Next up, my predictions for divisions and wild cards. We'll start with the NFC. So starting with the NFC West, the San Francisco 49ers. I think the NFC West is going to be a less competitive division when you compare all the eight. I think the San Francisco 49ers, I talked about them a little, starting with that defense. You got Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead. They just brought in Javon Hargrave. You're getting Emmanuel Mosley back, who had a torn ACL last year. Jimmy Ward. You have a good secondary. You obviously have Fred Warner, who's the best linebacker in the game. That defense is scary. The biggest thing with the 49ers comes down to the offensive side of the ball. They lost the NFC Championship last year because both their quarterbacks got hurt. That was definitely a reason it wasn't as competitive as it should have been. Am I saying the 49ers should have won that game? No, but I think if Brock Purdy's in the game like the entire time, I think it's a much closer game. And speaking of Brock Purdy, he's named the starter. A bold prediction here is Sam Darnold does get some time during the regular season. And I think this is a system made for Sam Darnold. This is a system made for any quarterback. Not to take anything away from Brock Purdy. I think he's a good starter in the league. But Kyle Shanahan runs one of the most QB-friendly offenses and running back-friendly offenses, obviously. So it's between Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. You have all these stars. I don't think the 49ers are going to have a problem winning the NFC West and going further than that. Next up in the NFC South, I have the New Orleans Saints. I really like the New Orleans Saints this year. I think when you look at Derek Carr coming over, this is a better quarterback than they have since Drew Brees. And they had Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. They've had a bunch of guys who were not able to get the Saints over the hump. I think Derek Carr is able to do that. And I think Michael Thomas comes back and has a pretty decent year. And when you look at the Saints defense between Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, and a few other guys, I think the Saints are the best team in the NFC South, which is one of the weaker divisions in football. Next up, the Detroit Lions are going to win the NFC North. Like I've been talking about with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think the Lions are taking a huge step forward this year. I think on the offensive side of the ball, they had one of the best offenses in the league last year with Jared Goff, DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They lose Swift to the Eagles. They bring in Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Donovan Knight from the Jets. And I think that's a running back three-headed monster. And I think the Lions will have a really good offense again. But what's going to make the Lions really good this year, I'm not saying they're going to go too far in the playoffs. I don't even have playoff predictions on here. I only have the Super Bowl, but I don't know how good the Lions will become crunch time because they haven't won a playoff game in over 40 years. But what will make the Lions really good this year and really scary is their defense. Their defense was towards the top of the league in the second half of the season last year. The Lions started 1-6 and almost made the playoffs. And now they bring in players like Cam Sutton, and they have Aiden Hutchinson, who could be a sleeper for Defensive Player of the Year. They have James Houston, who had 8 sacks in 7 games last year. This is a Lions defense that's very underrated and flew under the radar, and they only got better. So I think the Lions are going to win the NFC North. And last, the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles are winning the NFC East. I think that's some people pick Dallas. I don't know how many people would pick the New York Giants, but I think when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they got better, after losing the Super Bowl. They obviously have a new defensive coordinator, but let's look on the offensive side of the ball. I think Jalen Hurts puts up another big year. They bring in DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell. Whoever's running back one is going to get a lot of reps, is going to get a lot of yards there. You obviously have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins. They're so talented on that side of the ball. And then you look on the defensive side. Yes, the Eagles defense did not perform well in the Super Bowl. Everybody knows that. But one, it's Patrick Mahomes, and that's not an excuse in the biggest game. But then they bring in a bunch of other guys. They lose Javon Hargrave, but they have Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, who they just brought in from the draft. Look at the Eagles' defensive tackle depth between Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis. That's really scary. And then you have one of the best edge rushers in the league in Hassan Reddick. This Eagles defense is really good. And they made not a big move, but a very important move, bringing in James Bradbury again, or re-signing him, for lack of a better word. And yeah, when you put him on the outside with Darius Slay, and then you have Avonte Maddox on the inside, Eagles are scary. Now, my wild card picks. 1, Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys got better this offseason. I do not think Dak Prescott leads the league in interceptions. Cowboys had one of the biggest moves this offseason, bringing in Stephon Gilmore. I think the Cowboys are trying to do exactly what they saw the Eagles do. Look at the Cowboys pass rush. They have one of the best edge rushers in the game in Micah Parsons. Linebackers, they have Leighton Vander Esch, who's a really good linebacker in coverage, which is what the Eagles had. And then you bring in Stephon Gilmore to be on the other side of Trevon Diggs. It's sort of like Slay and Bradbury, and I personally think it's better than Slay and Bradbury. I mean, Diggs is a big play cornerback, and Stephon Gilmore, even with his older age, he's still able to lock up these guys. And so the Cowboys are going to take a step forward. I think losing Ezekiel Elliott, no disrespect for him, I think Tony Pollard goes over 1,500 total scrimmage yards. You obviously have CeeDee Lamb. You bring in Brandon Cooks, who's had over 1,000 yards in like 4 teams now. I think the Cowboys are a team that not only is a wild card team, but I think they do win a playoff game this year. And I don't think that's really that contestable or contested. Next wildcard team, the Green Bay Packers. I'm really high on the Green Bay Packers. I'm really high on Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's going to have a lot of time to throw on this offensive line. He has one of the best hitch options in Aaron Jones. I love A.J. Dillon. I think the young talent on wide receiver. Look at Christian Watson going over 1,300 yards this year. He had 8 touchdowns in his last 7 games or something like that, starting with the game against the Cowboys where he had 3. Yes, there's the big elephant in the room with this team is losing Aaron Rodgers, but I think Jordan Love sat behind him for 3 years. I think Matt LaFleur is able to get Love into this offense between Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and a few other guys. You got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and on the defensive side of the ball, you still have Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas. You lose Adrian Amos, but you still have Darnell Savage and some other safeties. Devondre Campbell is one of the better linebackers in the league, no matter what it is. And I just think that the Packers will be a wild card team. And my last wild card team is the Seattle Seahawks. I really like the Seahawks this year. Again, they snuck into the playoffs last year. If it wasn't for a Packers loss, they wouldn't be there. But Geno Smith had the best season of his career, got him a 3-year, $100 million extension. They have one of the best wide receiver corps in football, and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, sleeper for offensive rookie of the year. Everybody knows how good he is if he stays healthy. And when you look in the defensive side of the ball, Tariq Woolen is one of the better young cornerbacks in the game. And then you have Kobe Bryant. You have some other guys. Their pass rush is fine. They obviously lost Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson, so their run defense is going to be a little bit of a question mark, but I do really like the Seahawks this year, and it's because their offense. Pete Carroll knows how to run a sufficient offense or an efficient offense, and I think that they will be the last playoff team in the NFC. Moving on, AFC, starting with the AFC West. Kansas City Chiefs. Picking the Chiefs. I didn't really think of any other team. I just think the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. They have Travis Kelce. I don't know what their wide receiving core is going to be like. If Kadarius Toney definitely has the potential to emerge as a number one, and I think that Chiefs defense will be a little better, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, you have to be favored to win the division. Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl run, and I think that they'll win the division. Maybe not easily, but I do think they win the division. AFC South, Jacksonville Jaguars. I talked about the Jaguars with Doug Peterson. You bring in Calvin Ridley, him and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and even some Jamal Agnew to be a weapon for Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence takes a big step forward. Again, over 30 touchdowns. I think that Jaguars defense is scary too. Tyson Campbell might become one of the best corners in the game if he's able to put some stuff together. I really like the Jaguars. AFC North, Cincinnati Bengals. I told you already, I think Joe Burrow wins MVP. I think they have the best passing offense in football between Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Irv Smith, Joe Mixon at running back. Also, look at Chase Brown getting a lot of receiving reps out of the backfield. Burrow will find him. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the game. I'd have him at number 2. And I think that the Bengals are going to win the AFC North. And now probably the most controversial, AFC East. The AFC East is probably one of the best divisions in football. I finally have it being done. I think the New York Jets win the AFC East. You could go back to when the Bills lost to the Bengals. The Buffalo Bills lost to Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC divisional round. And I go, the Bills Super Bowl window is still open, but there are teams getting better. And I specifically about the Jets, I said, if the New York Jets are able to get a Derek Carr or even an Aaron Rodgers, where are the New York Jets worse than the Buffalo Bills? There are a few positions, but the Jets are a more talented roster than the Buffalo Bills. Would I take Aaron Rodgers over Josh Allen? Probably not, but it's not that like separate of an issue in this season, in a one-game season. I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play football. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play football. I think the Jets defense, between that pass rush led by Quinnen Williams, that CJ Mosley had over 110 tackles last year, one of the best cornerback duos in the game, and Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. The Jets don't really have a weakness right now. Their weakness is their offensive line. If their offensive line is healthy, knock on wood, they are a scary team. Not only to win the division for the first time since 2002, but to really make a playoff run. And I'm not only saying that as a Jets fan. I'm saying that because the New York Jets are a real football team that won 7 games last year with the worst quarterback play in the league. And now they bring in Aaron Rodgers. So I think the New York Jets do win the AFC East. Now my wild card teams. Buffalo Bills. Just talked about the Bills. Super Bowl window's not closed. The Bills could win a playoff game. They might even beat the Jets, honestly, and I would not be surprised. And it starts on Monday. Bills Jets is one of the biggest games in Week 1. But Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, that defense is still really good. So the Buffalo Bills are a wild card team. Los Angeles Chargers. I love Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He has a very good receiving core if they're healthy, and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and they're bringing Quentin Johnson from TCU, who is one of the best college football receivers. I expect him to make an impact from the jump. And you look on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel, they have playmakers. I do think they finished second in the West, and I think they are a scary team. I also think there's some fuel after blowing a 27 or 24 nothing lead or 27 nothing lead to the Jaguars in the wild card round, whatever it was. They're going to be back in the playoffs. And my last playoff team in the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens. And I know that leaves a lot of good teams out. It leaves the Dolphins out. It leaves the Denver Broncos out. It leaves the Steelers out. It leaves a lot of teams that could make a boom. But I think that Lamar Jackson's offense only got better, bringing in Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers. I think this defense, they brought back Roquan Smith. They have a lot of players who really know how like the game works, and I think that Lamar Jackson really is a good quarterback, not only on the ground but in the air when his receivers are healthy. I think that you could see that at the start of last year, and so I think the Ravens are that last playoff team. And now I'm not going to go into playoff game by game, just my Super Bowl prediction. My Super Bowl prediction is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Kansas City Chiefs, a rematch of Super Bowl 54. I think the 49ers take down the Eagles in the NFC Championship. I think the 49ers are the best roster in football right now outside of the quarterback position. And if Brock Purdy is able to do what he did last year, then the 49ers are a scary team. And if they are able to stay healthy, the 49ers will be that team in the NFC. Again, health is a big question with them, but you look at all these playmakers they have on the offensive side of the ball between Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings could get some play time. And that offensive line led by Trent Williams, it's scary. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball, and it's Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, Fred Warner, Javon Hargrave coming over. You have Emmanuel Mosley, you have Jarvarius Ward, you have Jimmy Ward. I mean, it's a scary team. And so I think they're coming out of the NFC. And the AFC, Kansas City Chiefs, I think the Chiefs are reaching that point of being a dynasty. And I think it's because of Patrick Mahomes, who's one of the best players to ever play a sport. And I think that Patrick Mahomes has another great season. No matter how good the defense is, that offense could be unstoppable. Obviously, they might not have Travis Kelce tonight. Chris Jones is still in contract negotiations, but if he's back by week 8, that Chiefs defense is a lot better than it was last year. I think Trent McDuffie takes a huge step forward for the Chiefs, becoming their cornerback 1. He's a cornerback that came from Washington, really featured him on the defense, and I think that this Chiefs defense is going to be better. Now, my Super Bowl prediction, the Kansas City Chiefs. I just talked about it. I think the Chiefs are going to be a dynasty. 3 Super Bowls in 5 years and is a testament to a dynasty. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is just that quarterback. He's just so good. The Chiefs don't really have a weakness because Mahomes is able to cover it all. And their defense is not a top defense in the league, but when you have an offense that constantly scores over 30 points per game, they're hard to stop. Then Andy Reid's one of the best coaches in football. I think that the Chiefs, no matter who they put out there, if Patrick Mahomes is out there, they have a shot to win any game. And right now, I just can't pick any team to beat them. And so it is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I just can't see any other team beating them right now. Obviously, there's so much parity in the NFL season, but I do think the Chiefs go back-to-back and become the first back-to-back Super Bowl champion in a while. So with that, there's my NFL predictions for this upcoming season. I'll start doing game-by-game ones too, but for now, enjoy week 1.